Call to order this council meeting of the Village of Ashcroft for Monday, April the 12th, 2021. Move to adopt the agenda as presented. Second by Councillor Davenport. Are there any additions? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor? Carried. Move on to the minutes. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on Monday, March 22nd? Councillor Anderson, Councillor Toohey seconds. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing and hearing none on the question, all those in favor? Carried. And could I please have a motion regarding the minutes of the special meeting of the council held on Friday, March 22nd? Councillor Anstett, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Are there any errors or omissions? On the question, all those in favor? Carried.
Sorry, I was late.
That's all right. We have no delegations tonight, so we move straight to public input. Do we have any questions from anyone watching online, or have we had any submitted in advance of tonight's meeting?
I have not had any resubmitted.
None, thank you. Questions?
Oh, Gloria's planning on calling in.
Okay.
Give opportunity to, if anybody's got questions. I have questions on my own.
No other questions online? All right. So if anyone has any questions who is watching online, now is the time to ask them. Questions must pertain to something on tonight's agenda.
Oh, Anne has questions. Go ahead, Gloria.
Hi there. Are you there, Jessica?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I think Anne has a question.
Yeah, I'll let her ask her question. Go ahead and talk, and I'll just have her let her type the question while you're talking.
Do you want me to ask my questions right now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to ask some questions, and thank you, Hub Online Network, again for videotaping this and having a record. I'm going to ask a few questions, and interrupt me, Jessica, anytime Anne is ready to ask her questions. I'll direct you to different parts of the agenda so that you know where I'm at. 6.1, the summer student hiring. And I don't need any comments from the council. I'm just going to give some input. I'm just going to suggest, or perhaps give as an assignment, that the summer student look at investigating the cost and the parameters around installing meters. I think the CFO already mentioned that there's going to be a possible mandate by the provincial government. We know that the TNRD already has water systems that are all metered, and the Water Master Plan, created way back in, 2010, called for meters by 2021. So I think it's time, and I think eventually that is going to be the way it was going to go. And while you have the summer student, it would be probably a good idea just to use that time to do some research. 6.2. This is the procedure bylaw, perhaps the change. And I just wanted to reiterate that the important part for council to consider is the fact that there is no dialogue for community members, not even in the working groups. Surveys are not dialogue. Dialogue is the opportunity for people to listen and to have the opportunity to change someone's mind. So it's not just simple tallying of numbers and finding what prejudices did the public say at this point, but it's actually for the public to consider the arguments that are put before them and make informed decisions. So I'm going to suggest, even though the staff report was very biased into leading on the council to developing a community a communication strategy rather than changing the bylaw, that you consider option 3, which is changing the bylaw and offering open dialogue to the public. Again, that whole point, I know that you don't have all the answers, but many times you can always defer those answers or those questions to operations or whatever, but allowing the public to speak is so important for accountability and transparency. Number 3, 6.4, public engagement of the burning bylaw. Again, I know that you're just looking at engagement, and so that's what I'll address at this point. And I'm going to suggest that you look at option 2, 50 persons or more, for the same reason, 50 persons or less, just because people that are in open dialogue are more apt to look at the arguments presented, have an opportunity to really consider the arguments and to change their mind. Whereas when you just put out a survey, again, it's whatever prejudices or whatever we want to call them, the point of view of that particular person, but they're not considering all the options. And many times I have been in meetings where I have changed my position, and I think that's the whole key to a democracy, is the ability for people to interact and be able to change their mind. 7.5, the letter regarding the overdose crisis, Mums Stop the Harm. And I just want you to think about how to regulate and ensure that there will be no drugs through the container port operations. You have to have checks in place, and the village is responsible. It's not just the port's responsibility. I think that the village has to take some responsibility in knowing what's coming into their community and what possibly is leaving. That could impact our small community and the region incredibly. Anyway, I won't go on into that. 8.1, this is the actionable motions list. And I would just ask that the CAO consider adding in parentheses or some kind of details as to what the actionable motion list is, to clarify, not the list itself, but certain motions. It's very unspecific. It just says, for instance, when the public reads it, says something like that the Village of Ashcroft endorse the grant in aid for funding request in the amount of $500. It doesn't say to who, it doesn't say what it's all about. So just give a little bit more specific so we don't have to go back into the agenda of the former, previous meetings and have to dig and try to find out what the motion was all about. And number 6, 10.2, the trails, working notes of the trails master plan. I noticed that there's just the 4 people on the working group, that is 2 staff members and the 2 counselors. Again, no real public participation, and I know that you have a survey out there and that people have been responding very well to the survey, but again, there is no discussion. And one thing I want you to be considering and thinking about that a lot of people in town have wondered about and are looking for is river access as part of the plan. So again, thinking about how we can get river access for the community. And the last question, the Council Committee and Liaison Report, I think this is the Mayor's Report 11.1 about the community garden. Again, I just want you to think about the difference between a community garden versus an allotment garden. It did sound like you were leading towards an allotment garden, which is not at all a community garden. So please look that up and really consider what it means to have a community garden. And that's all I have to say. And I'll pass it over to Jessica and Anne. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And question from Anne McKay.
Yes. Her first question is, and I'm not sure it pertains to tonight's agenda, does the Village of Ashcroft support where wellness awaits?
That really isn't pertinent to anything on tonight's agenda, but we're certainly open to field that question at any time.
And her next question is, do the working groups contain citizen volunteers? How does one become involved in the working groups?
All the working groups have had one meeting couple of them have had two. The initial meetings were just to define the scopes of the various projects and to start looking at ways forward. And it is up to each individual working group to decide what outside involvement there is going to be and what that is going to look like. So as the groups start to meet, as the scope is fleshed out, as progress is made, then each individual group will be looking to see who from the community or who from outside might be brought into each group, but that's up to each group to decide. Certainly, I would say if anyone in the member of the public has questions about any of the working groups, you can look and see who's on them, and if you're interested in them, come and talk to one of the council members who's on it, who will be able to maybe fill you in with a few more details. And if and when they decide to open it up to public involvement, say, hey, I'd like to know about that. That's it from Anne McKay. Okay. And are there any other questions? All right. Thank you. We move on to section 5, bylaws, of which there are none. And that takes us to item 6.1, request for a summer student, and a motion is required. So what is council's pleasure on this item? And that is on page 8 of your agenda. I saw a hand go up. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council authorize staff to post this summer student position.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Anstead. Discussion? No?
Great idea.
Yeah,
No?
excellent.
I mean, the water consumption, obviously, we've seen it go up. Recycling too. The Eco Depot, which the TNRD is promising us, hopefully is going to be completed at some point in 2021. I think a lot of people have probably fallen out of the recycling habit over the last few years, particularly since what we had was removed from railway. So I think that having someone who can help to do that education piece and provide the information, the education, the encouragement in advance of the new Eco Depot starting up will be good. Maybe work with the TNRD to see what the new facility is going to look like and how people can prepare for when it does open. Anything else on this? Councillor Davenport.
Oh, well, I wanted to say I understand that it's important, as our staff is very hardworking, and to alleviate some of that and have available somebody who can do the record management system and help out in that area, I think is really important and appreciated by the staff. So it's sort of seems like what's presented as a twofold kind of position, and probably more as things become apparent.
No, that getting things online is very, very time consuming. But it is immensely helpful to members of the public, to staff, to have that available easily at one's fingertips from anywhere. Any other comments? On the question, all those in favor? Carried. Oops. We move on to item 6.2, CAO report on the procedures bylaw, page 9 of your agenda package. We have several recommendations here from staff. What is council's pleasure? Does anyone have a recommendation here? Councillor Toohey.
Thank you. I'd like to move that we go with option 4.
Okay, does that have a seconder? Second? The motion is not seconded, so it dies on the floor, so we'll go back and try again. Okay. I would like to move option 1, that council directs staff to develop a communication strategy for public engagement and not amend bylaw number 834.
And I will second.
Councillor Anderson seconds that. I'll open it up to discussion and say that my thinking is that when I have heard from people about communication, it is not so much the dialogue portion, because most people realize that they can contact any member of council, any member of staff at any time reasonably, but that it is the communication, it is knowing what council is doing and why, that seems to be something that people feel is lacking. So I think that if we can address that piece to let people know what we are working with the working groups, for example, is a good example. I think that will help with the communication strategy in that people will have more of their questions answered because they'll be seeing more about what we're doing.
That's right.
I think we have made strides with the Facebook page. I think that's a good start, the monthly newsletters, but let's see what else is out there that we can work on. And this is where the summer student might well, because of what they are doing, come up with some of these methods for communication that we have not maybe utilized as much as we could, or that are quite effective. Councillor Toohey.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I'm just wondering if the communication, if it could be laid out so that we know what we could contribute on our Facebook page as well, because I wouldn't mind writing on there, talking about, you know, the different working groups that I'm on, or if I have questions or that sort of thing. So I think I kind of just need a guideline of what I can say on there, or, you know, or if it needs to go to an administrator first to look it over and then it be posted. But I think that would be a good communication way. More people would probably listen to that than they do to our meetings.
And I mean, anyone who wants to put something out on social media, for example, and is looking at what they've written and thinking, am I saying the right thing? Is this appropriate? Have I said too much? I'm sure staff would be happy to look it over and say, no, you're perfectly fine. This is the sort of thing you would put in an agenda for your report. So you're perfectly fine to put it on social media. That's another way of engaging people, because they might feel more comfortable engaging you as a person, maybe rather than contacting the village office.
Yeah.
And everyone knows where to find you.
Unfortunately, sometimes. Unfortunately, sometimes.
Your Worship, if I may, then perhaps what should be included in the communications policy then is perhaps social.
I don't think you're.
I'm not on. Is it not on for me? Yeah.
Oh, I thought you turned it off.
Okay, is develop or update the social media policy about the guidelines of what can, is okay to go on council, but that you would normally discuss, and what kinds of things should be coming from the village as a post, as opposed to a council post.
CFO Bauer.
Your Worship, just a point I was thinking about was, councils speaking with one voice. So if there are different opinions between councillors, which is natural, can happen, how we deal with that. So maybe something to think about in the communication strategy, how we're dealing with one voice, because that's important. The public receives one message rather than conflicting messages. So another facet of this.
Anything else?
Was something, now it's gone. Wasn't your fault.
All right, no more? On the question, all those in favor? Carried. We have item 6.3, delegation presentation. I'd like to move the recommendation. Council directs staff to forward these suggestions to the appropriate working groups for consideration.
Second.
Councillor Davenport seconds. Any discussion? I mean, a number of them have been actually raised at the relevant working groups. So I think codifying them like this and forwarding, it's a good communication strategy, and it's something else for the groups to formally take under when they're looking at the scope of their project. Councillor Toohey.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I just wanted to mention that the Legacy Park, a Heritage Park one that I am on, once we finish doing what sort of our objective is the idea that we can then further on do other projects. Like that is one project, but it can definitely develop into more projects, and a lot of those are the ones that are mentioned. So I can see that happening with a lot of the working groups, that they move on to other things.
Evolve.
Yeah,
That's
they
right.
evolve, yeah. Thank you.
Well, a lot of the working groups, the projects will be works in progress for quite some time, and work will start, and then as things get accomplished, more might be added to the scope of the project as you move on with it. So they're very fluid. Councillor Davenport.
And I was just going to continue and into the next budgetary year as well, because I think a lot of folks think that we can accomplish, what the parameters we set out, in addition to what they're thinking within that budgetary calendar year. So I think it's important for people to understand great ideas. Let's put them on, in the queue to be worked on and to be substantially put through a budgetary possibility, right? So I think it's important for the public to know that we're not quashing things. We're allowing what we have in our front and center oven to be done, and then there's lots of other things that can be done in the future. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Nope, good point. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, on the question, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We move on to 6.4, burning bylaw public engagement process and burning bylaw draft survey questions, pages 13 to 16 in your agenda. And we have 3 recommendations from staff. What is council's pleasure on this item? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I would like to go with the option 2 recommendation, that council defer consideration of amending the burning bylaw until such a time as public gatherings of over 50 people is permitted by the public health officer.
Okay, thank you. Does that motion have a seconder? Second for that motion? Seeing none, that motion dies on the floor. So we'll go back and try again. Do we have a motion? Councillor Anstett.
I'd like to make a motion for option 1, that council move forward with the proposed public engagement methods presented by staff, and that staff commence the public engagement process to consider possible amendments to the burning bylaw.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Toohey, thank you. I would like, if possible, to add an amendment to that recommendation that the public engagement to include a public gathering as soon as allowable by provincial health orders.
Does it need a seconder?
That needs a seconder. Thank you. Second. So now we're discussing the amendment, which is regarding adding a public meeting as soon as possible to that. Is there any discussion on the amendment? No. Seeing none. Voting. Oh.
I do have a suggestion, I don't know, an amendment on amendment, that perhaps, I'm thinking perhaps in the future the over 50 might be a bit of a stretch to have perhaps a number of evenings with a more limited an amount.
That's right. I think that if we have a public public gatherings, then even if we are not allowed to have gatherings of more than 50 people, then there is nothing to stop us from having a series of gatherings over maybe one in the afternoon and one in the evening.
Right.
To try, we have done that in the past with public meetings where we have tried to have them at different times so that people can make it no matter what their schedule is. So this is not saying one meeting,
Right.
or not limiting ourselves to one meeting.
Right.
CO Dick, sorry, did I see your hand go up, or are you just waiting?
I'm just wondering if we can make it a more generic motion of public engagements to be included. Public engagements to include a public gathering as soon as allowable by public health order, not put a limited number in there. It could just be as soon as we're allowed to gather in public, then we can decide whether we do multiple smaller or
Right.
one.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, because it might be 10.
Or the public engagement process, the amendment would be that the public engagement process include public gatherings, plural, as soon as allowable
include public
Okay,
gatherings
and
as
Councillor
soon as
Toohey on the
allowable.
amendment?
Yes, it was just questioning the same thing as
Okay.
our
So we're
CO.
not limiting
Yeah.
ourselves to one public
That's
gathering. We
right.
are saying as soon as possible, we will start to
Yeah.
include public gatherings in this process.
Yeah, because
So
it might be
multiple-
10, it
multiple.
might be,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So any further discussion on the amendment, which is about adding public gatherings to this? Okay, on the amendment then, all those in favor? Carried. So we're back to the amended motion now. So any discussion on that amended motion? And I will just say that I think having that public gathering component is very important. I mean, as I said at the last meeting, a lot of the people who will be most affected by this one way or the other are people who, for whatever reason, are going to be unlikely or uncomfortable to go on social media and use platforms that many people have adopted, however reluctantly. So I think, yeah, that and the face-to-face and having people there is it can't be replaced. And I'm sure a lot of people who are comfortable with Zoom meetings, as an example, would also come to a public meeting because of the nature of a public meeting, of having that back and forth dialogue. All right, so the survey questions, again, that's included, though that's a separate motion, is it not?
We need to vote on the first motion.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll have a vote on the motion about the engagement process. All those in favor? Carried. All right, and now we move on to,
Questions.
pardon me?
The survey questions.
Yeah, the survey questions, which start on page 16.
Sorry.
No, yes, 16. So we need a motion to approve these survey questions to be distributed to all post boxes. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second by Councillor Anderson. Any discussion on the questions here provided? So will this be an online survey as well as a paper-based? Okay. Councillor Davenport.
Thank you. Is there a room for, like a survey is a survey, is there room for extra information that somebody would want to
Comment.
create an awareness for us about their personal opinion beyond a survey? So that would be probably helpful in either situation.
If I may, Your
COD.
Worship. Yeah, so what you have before you, those are just the items, the actual questions that we thought we should be asking. There should be a comments section at the end of the survey that'll have that opportunity. And the questions will have clear yes, no, all those kinds of things checked. This is just a very simplified version of it, what the survey will look like.
Because I think, again, that public commenting, you know, whether it's someone who is in favor of burning because they see the fire hazards inherent in having a lot of brush buildup, or people who are opposed because they have COPD. And we need to have a space for them to leave their comments either way. Good. Any further discussion on this motion regarding the questions? No? On the question then, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Correspondence. We have 2 or 3 action items here, and the first one is regarding the Help Cities Lead campaign. And I would move that the Village of Ashcroft support the Help Cities Lead campaign using the template letter here to the ministers involved. Second, Councillor Toohey, thank you. Any discussion?
No.
No. On the question, all those in favor? Carried. Item 7.2, UBCM annual membership dues. Dues. We have, so council is being asked for a motion to approve payment of the annual membership dues to UBCM for 2021. Looks like Councillor Toohey makes that motion and
Yes,
Councillor
please.
Anderson seconds it. Thank you. Any discussion? UBCM has been very good to us in many ways over the last few years. On the question, any discussion? All right, on the question then, all those in favor? Carried. And the District of Sicamous, resolution on invasive Asian clams. I'd like to move that we receive and file.
I'll second that.
Second, Councillor Toohey, thank you. Any discussion on Asian clams, which seem to be joining zebra mollusks as a species to watch out for. All right, on the question, all those in favor? Carried. And we have some information correspondence. I'd like to move to receive and file. Councillor Anstett seconds. Comments on any of the information correspondence? On the question then, all those in favor? Carried. I saw you there, Councillor Toohey.
I'm already
Out of the corner
ahead
of
of
my
myself.
eye. All right, we move on to item 8.1, the task manager. I'd like to move to receive and file.
Second.
Second by Councillor Davenport. Are there any questions or comments on any of the items in the task manager?
Just wanted to
Councillor
make
Anderson?
a comment that it's almost all green. So that's great. Thank you to the staff for all their hard work. Yeah, we're getting there.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor? Carried. I saw that one, definitely. And we move on to the draft public art policy. I'd like to, Councillor Toohey, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I'd like to make a motion that council approves the public art policy as presented and direct staff to draft 2 schedules for attachment and be brought back to council for approval. Schedule A, contract, and Schedule B, maintenance plan.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davenport seconds that. Now there's a surprise. Just kidding. All right, any discussion? Thank you, staff, for making the changes. It was a great document to start with. Thank you for going through. Now, one thing I did notice, though, on page 4 of the draft policy, page 37 of your agenda package at the top, under upon project approval by council, the artist must enter into a contract, and bullet point 3 is insurance coverage. I think that needs to be removed because that is addressed by an addition further down, saying they'll be covered under the Village of Ashcroft's workers' compensation insurance. So I think that just got missed because the insurance was an add-on.
Good eye. Yeah.
So. And does anyone have any, this is still a place where we could, it's not written in stone. CFO Bala?
So, comment about the insurance, the associated policy under MI, not workers' compensation.
Yes, the associated policy. The liability policy.
Yeah, so, I don't know the workers' compensation coverage for.
Okay.
Just, we might have to follow through with that, your worship.
Okay, thank you. So this is still a place to make change. If you see anything else that you think needs to be addressed or tweaked, or so we're going to follow through and see if workers' compensation will cover artists who are working on village property to install artwork or create artwork.
Sorry, I should better turn this on, I forgot. Your worship, workers' compensation is dealing with village employees, not contractors per se. Contractors have their own policy. For artists who are not doing really village work, doing the artist work, we get MIA liability insurance if the village wants and takes up that liability to cover them. So slightly different, insurance coverages.
Okay. Anything else that anyone saw in here? And also, I don't know, does it need to be put in somewhere that this is only dealing with art that is on Village of Ashcroft property? This does not apply to a private business owner who do we need to put that in here somewhere, do you think? That just came up while I was reading it again.
We can make it clearer.
Yeah.
I think that might be
Yeah.
an idea because there is so much and a lot of it is on private property and private buildings. And we just want to make it clear that this is anything on village property or village buildings only. This does not apply to an individual business, because an individual business owner might see this and go, oh, well, I'm not going to put that artwork up after all. Councillor Toohey.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. When I read it, it seemed quite clear to me.
Me too.
That it was just on village property, that I could put whatever I want. Well,
I'd like to
within
think,
reason.
I'd like to
on my
think
own
it is
property.
quite clear, but it's nowhere actually stated, and I just think it can't hurt to just
Yeah.
make that clear right at the
Reiterate,
beginning.
yep.
We can include it in the purpose statement.
Perfect, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, on the question, all those in favor? Carried. We have no new business. We move into the working group notes. First one up, storm drainage and runoff study working group notes. Where did that go? It was here. There it is. Any questions, comments on anything discussed there? Trails master plan. Anything discussed there? To any questions, comments?
It's exciting.
It is exciting, and just the river did come up.
Yeah.
No, it is rather an unsubtle feature of Ashcroft, the river. Everyone notices it, and there already has been discussion around emphasizing that as a feature of the village. How can we make more of it? How can we improve the access to it? How can we improve or possibly put trails along the river so that more people can enjoy it safely? And I think safety is really a lot of places, obviously, where people might traditionally, like even within the village, have accessed. I've seen an old photo of, I think, steps going down from this building to the river 100 and more years ago. So you want to encourage people to enjoy the river and appreciate it, but to do it safely.
Yes, exactly. No risk.
Yes. CFO Bala.
Your Worship, there's a paper survey going out this week as well.
Great.
So people who weren't inclined to respond to the online survey will have paper surveys in the mailbox this week.
Okay. Councillor Davenport.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, of course, what you mentioned earlier is that a lot of these working groups have had 1 or 2 meetings creating a scope of what we're looking at. And with this particular one, it appears that there is some reach out with collaboration of the Ashcroft Indian Band and, of course, the Hub being involved with grant funding. And I imagine, I'm not on this working group, but I imagine there would be a reach out to some of the community groups if they, or community individuals, if they were interested in creating an awareness of what their suggestions. There's a lot of walkers in our community, and they have a very important part, I think, in for us to understand the points of view that need to be heard.
Definitely. Councillor Toohey.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I believe that's probably why we're doing the survey, is so that people will have that opportunity. The one that's gone online, we've gotten a good response from. And as Yogi was saying, we'll be doing one in the mail out. And hopefully people will put on there, because it is fairly generic, but they will be able to put their own opinions and ideas on there. So hopefully everybody will participate in that.
Great.
It'll help us and know what the interest is. Thank you.
CFO Bala.
Your Worship, when people are reaching out to us who have done trails, like we had a response about somebody who likes mountain biking, has moved here, and so we forwarded that contact to. So we appreciate any and all feedback and ideas, and this is the time where the community can respond. Things which we haven't typically thought about. Mountain biking is becoming a huge sport, and any sort of feedback is really appreciated. And our people who are working with us on this are themselves avid hikers and mountain bikers. So I'm really pleased to work with them.
Excellent.
Thank you. I think it is really great that we are getting that feedback from the mountain bikers, because I think when you hear trails, a lot of people think of people hiking along with an alpenstock, and I think what we're finding is that trails mean different things to different people, whether it's someone maybe who has mobility issues and would like something flat and level, and fairly central, whether it's mountain bikers, whether it's people who want to do the Three Meadows Trail, whether it's people who want to walk up to the Ashcroft Band. So that, and it's going to be a process. This is not a quick thing.
No.
So I think there will be ample opportunity once the surveys have been collected and collated to then say, all right, what's the next step, and how do we maybe now expand the group of people who are working on this based on what we found. All right, so that's the Trails Working Group, and then the Economic Development and Tourism Working Group. Anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts about that? No? The brochure looks, well, we don't have the brochure. We have the advertising leaflet that's gone out. The brochure, I think, will be very attractive. First time Ashcroft has done anything like that. And something that came very strongly was let the pictures do the talking. So we are really going to be going image heavy on it, keeping words to a minimum, much as it pains me to say that. And photo, picture says 1,000 words. So letting the pictures and directing, using it as a direct, not as this is the comprehensive guide to Ashcroft, but as a tool to take people to where they will learn more about what the Chinese cemetery, the museum.
Yeah.
Councillor Anderson.
Just wanted to add to that, which I think is really cool too, is that we'll be requesting images from people out in the community for that brochure, and I think that's a great opportunity because there's a lot of great photographers around and they have fantastic pictures, so it'd be a good time to contribute in that way.
Yep. Where we will be reaching out to the public, asking them for their images of Ashcroft, and I think that's a really great way for people to take part and be a part of it, and showcase Ashcroft maybe from a different perspective. All right, we have the mayor's report. Anyone have any questions for the mayor? No? Good. On to the no. Anyone have any questions on my report? The vaccine roundtable, there have been some issues, as you might have heard, with people, especially when the new system went online on April 6th, people saying that they were phoning up and being told there's no such thing as a community clinic. I think most of those bugs have been ironed out now. They have added 200 spots to the Clinton Clinic. They are keeping an eye on the clinics in the communities as they book up to see if they do need to add more spots to them. At this time, they are distributing either it seems to be the Moderna vaccine here, but it's either Moderna or Pfizer, depending on supplies. That is what is being used at the community clinics so far. And that was about it. Anyone questions? No. We move on to report from Councillor Anderson. Any questions on that report? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I just wanted to clarify a couple things. On the report for the community garden. I have mentioned there that we wanted to get a public survey, but I had misunderstood that because we had actually applied for funding. The village has applied for funding for that, so I just wanted to correct that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then also with the notice of motion, that there's a typo error actually in that one. In my haste to get it out, let me just draw your attention to it. Underneath the table, in the paragraph right beneath it, in the second line, it says the 11+ seat rate division. What it should say is this seat rate division. I'm referring to the 1 to 10 seats there.
Oh, okay.
I guess I've moved around too many paragraphs and sentences when I was editing, so missed that. So I apologize for that.
All right, thank you very much for bringing the notice of motion. Any other comments on Councillor Anderson's report or on the notice of motion? No. We do not need a motion on a notice of motion. Thank you very much. Too many words. All right. Seeing nothing else, I would like to move that, oh, CFO Ballard.
Your Worship, just could we bring the financial statements to this meeting?
Do it now.
Do it now, sure.
Please.
Okay, in that case, I would like to move that we bring the draft audited financial statements into public, or to this meeting.
Approve financial statements.
So we approve the draft
Approve the financial statements.
Okay. I move that we approve the financial statements. I'm just going to say it properly here. Councillor Anstead, thank you. Any discussion on the financial statements, a report on which we had prior to this meeting? CFO Bella.
Your Worship, as soon as the auditor has sent the statements with the draft removed, they will be put up on the website as we do every year, and the public is welcome to have a look at them.
Excellent.
Right, and we do have, I will just remind the public watching this online, either now or after the event, that at the next council meeting on the 26th of April, we will be having a budget meeting where people will be able to take a preliminary look at the 2021 budget and submit suggestions or have comments on it, and then there will be a meeting, a town hall meeting for the budget and 5-year financial plan, which will include much of the information from the financial statements, and that is at the meeting on May the 10th, again at 5 o'clock.
At 5 or 4:30?
Or 4:30.
4:30.
4:30.
So meeting on the 26th, 4:30, and then on the 10th of May at 4:30, and those will be streamed online. CFO Ballard.
Your Worship, just for the public, it's the meeting on the 26th is the last opportunity for the public to comment on the projects and be heard by council. So we, as I do every year, I'll present what we're working on for the this year and the next year, and seek input as well.
Okay, thank you. So we'll be able to people can have a look at the projects that are coming up and have their input on them, ask questions. Okay. So on the motion then, all those in favor? Carried. And now, motion to move into closed meeting under Community Charter Section 90.1. Councillor Anderson, do I have a seconder? Councillor Toohey, all those in favor? Carried.